The Acadian people were exiled from Nova Scotia in 1755. Some moved back to France, others to Haiti or to the American colonies, or to the then Spanish-owned colony of Louisiana.
They wanted to regain what they had in Nova Scotia. So these folks came to get the land grants, and then they stayed because they developed neighborhoods and family connections, and they started to work in different industries that became very important.
And now they're being exiled again, but this time it's by Mother Nature.
You're seeing history repeat itself, only this time instead of a warring government forcing you to relocate, this is kind of a planet that's being modified beyond its ability to cope, that's forcing you to immigrate or migrate, if you will, for sure. And again, when you disconnect people from that vital resource that defines them and their livelihoods, how does that change you?
So it was very violent, at the hands of other people. It was very violent. And then I guess you kind of fast forward to where we are now. And, after experiencing Hurricane Ida, that too was very violent. But it felt, when Mother Nature's the one doing the violence.
Some people believe it's an environmental exile or an environmental disaster that causes a financial exile. Others think it's still because of human mistakes.
I don't know, because we also think about climate change, and there are acts that humans have done that have sort of made all of this stuff happen faster than it may have otherwise. But so I don't know, some people could argue that humans are responsible for things like Hurricane Ida with these stronger, more frequent, wetter hurricanes.
It's just the cost of rebuilding, the cost of staying means, maybe some folks can still afford to have a camp, but can everybody still afford to live? It's a troubling thing. And so that'll just keep moving north as we lose more and more land.
The Rougarou Fest celebrates these cultural traditions annually while raising money for coastal education programs.
We also discuss things about culture and how to maintain your culture, even if you do have to migrate north a little bit. And that's one of the things that we do at Rougarou Fest, is we celebrate all of those cultural aspects of what makes it so special to live here in southern Louisiana.
The Jean Lafitte National Park has programs set up to preserve the language, music, and stories.
I mean, that is an integral part of who we are as a people. Our stories help us share what we are and who we are with other people. And it is actually through stories that people connect to other people.
This second exile is not only about the land washing away or the people having to move. It's also about the Cajun culture and all that it entails with food, interactions with environment, family life, and more being washed away.
When I speak from a Cajun man's perspective, but there are a lot of other cultures that do exist aside from just the Cajun culture, so I definitely want to acknowledge that. But so for the Cajun people and a lot of other cultures as well, Native Americans, African American cultures that exist in this area, I think those folks would agree that we have a very strong sense of place here in southern Louisiana, and that means that our cultural identity is really tied into this area that provides us with shrimp and oysters and crawfish and be God knows if you know what those are. but all of those different things that we enjoy eating, um, and our families are usually very close by. You know, most people in this area, you know, have a lot of family members and a lot of, you know, friends from elementary school even. Um, a fun fact about Louisiana is we have the highest population of native born residents in the United States. So that means you're born in Louisiana, you live in Louisiana, you die in Louisiana. Um, and so I think that in itself is a testament to that strong sense of place we have to this area, because we love it so much that we don't move out.
It reminds me of the story of the emperor's bird and the nightingale, the emperor's nightingale. And the emperor had heard this magnificent song of the nightingale and said, I want that. So they went out, they captured the nightingale, they put it in this gilded cage. It was made of gold and had silk and every finery you can imagine. But ultimately the bird stopped singing because there is something more than just being safe. There is living, you know, that life, and it's very, to me, there's a lot of parallels between those two stories. While we have moved them and safeguarded them, they were fortunate that they could move as a whole community. And hopefully that's going to help keep that community intact. But again, part of that cultural isolation, a double-edged sword, is that you're able to live your culture more one-on-one. You are directly connected with your resource. If we move you, even though we've moved you as a group, and we move you away from that very deep, abiding connection to the resource, what will happen? Nobody knows.
We need a place to live to be able to do the things that we do, you know, and the land and water around us is very much tied into our culture.
As hurricanes, erosion, and subsidence eat away at the land, people in low-lying areas are coming to realize that they one day will be next.
In the 1850s, there was a resort called, well, I don't know what the name of the resort was, but it was Last Island, Ile de Nier. And so it was, there was a resort out there, and wealthy people would go and vacation on that island. It was like the Hamptons in, but you know, Southern Terrebonne Parish. And the hurricane, and at that resort there was a bowling alley, and there was a ballroom, and there was all of this amazing, you know, this amazing infrastructure for that time that I would have never thought could have existed out there, because having been out there, you just see it's sort of a little sliver of a beach now. And so fast forward to now, and Hurricane Ida has taken out the bowling alley that is probably 5 minutes from my house. And so the storm ripped off the roof, destroyed broke down some walls, and they just recently tore down the bowling alley maybe 2 weeks ago. And it made me think, my gosh, you know, in 100 years, in 50 years, are people going to be looking at the area where I live at now and say, wow, you know, I heard they had a bowling alley there. It's such a weird place to be, because I always imagine what that resort on Last Island would have been like with that bowling alley. But now in present day, I know what it was like to go to the bowling alley 5 minutes down from my house, and it's gone. And there will be stories about, like, yeah, I think there was a bowling alley someplace around on this side of town, you know?
While this exile of Acadian people isn't all at once or as violent as the first in Nova Scotia, the result is still the same. The Cajun or Acadian people are being forced to move away from the land that they are connected to, and in that, they're losing their culture and their identity.